right, you guys, it's episode 88 of Inner Demons, and without further ado, I'm going to get straight to it. But before I jump into this episode, on behalf of Sandman, I want to apologize for that last video. The editing was horrible. I know a lot of you guys were thinking that I was repeating myself, that I was talking in circles. Like you said, get to the story, B-Man, get to the damn story. Quit talking in circles so we can hear the story. It wasn't me talking in circles. It was the editing. There were things in that video that should have been deleted, edited out, but it wasn't. I don't know. Sandman smoking some of that good, some of that ganji. I don't know what he's doing over there, but hey, it happens. It happens, and, you know, we move on. It was addressed, so I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen again. Anyways, let me get into this next video. It's been a minute since I put out an Inner Demons, so I don't want to lose track of where I'm at. I'm back in Little Max, the tier that I spent so much time trying to brainstorm, trying to get up off of that tier. Everything that I went through, the 2 spearings, everything that I did with Dancing Bear to try to, to coordinate getting off of that tier. It was all for nothing. I ended up landing back on that tier like I would in many other places in that county jail. The observation cell, this observation cell, that observation cell, this max tier. I was jumping around on all these same different tiers. Max tiers, observation cells. So I'm back in Little Max. In time, it pretty much just come to a standstill. Nothing was happening at that point. The case wasn't moving. I told you guys that a lot of the times they wouldn't even take us to court. On the day we were scheduled to go to court, they wouldn't even come and get us. Later on that day, either somebody would come and let me know, or sometimes they wouldn't even let me know. I would have to call my attorney and ask him, and he'd just tell me, hey, they kicked it back for another month or 2. So, at that point, it was just time had just come to a standstill. All we were really doing back there was working out and focusing on our cases. I spend the majority of my time in the cell just combing over my case, trying to find anything, trying to find a technicality, anything that I could grab onto to help me maybe win this case. I was looking for a miracle, but there was none. I was in a lot of trouble. And the case, like I told you guys, it kept on just getting worse and worse. I would get more police reports out of nowhere. Some norteño that I wouldn't even know out there in San Jose would get busted, and somehow this individual was linked to somebody that was part of my regiment out there on the streets, and because you were linked to this guy, somehow they would try to link that individual back to me. One of the things that I haven't really talked a whole lot about is the relationship with my family. I talked a lot about it in the beginning when I ended up getting myself caught up on the phone calls. But through this whole process, as I'm going through everything that I'm going through in the county jail, the death of Vicky, and just everything I'm going through, I stayed in contact with, my stepfather and my mom the entire time. Me and my mom, we were extremely close. A lot of us that been through foster care, or, that had parents that are dolphins, were addicts, that were out there in the streets running around, that are part of that lifestyle. We had different kind of relationships with our parents. I know me and my mom, we had a different kind of relationship than a regular mother-son. She was like my road dog. She was like my, a friend. She was more like the homegirl. That's how it was when I was a youngster and I was out there doing my thing in the streets. I'm not going to say she was an enabler. She allowed me to do what I was going to do. I just think that she knew that she couldn't stop me. I was going to do what I was going to do. At 12, 13 years old, I was a hard-headed youngster. There was nobody that could stop me from doing what I wanted to do. It didn't matter how much help you gave me, what kind of program you put me in, what was hanging over my head. If I had my mind set on something, I was going to do it. And the relationship I had with my mom was the same way. I stopped going to school. I started drinking a lot of, alcohol. And then, that eventually led to me using drugs. And then when I hit the streets, she couldn't tell me nothing. I was like an adult at 12, 13 years old. So I think my mom came to the realization at some point that she couldn't control me, and that, she just allowed me to do what I was going to do. A lot of times when I'd be out there in the streets and I'd be committing burglaries or robberies, and, I'd be out there jacking fools, a lot of the money that I would get from these crimes that I was committing, I break bread with my mom. I knew she had to pay rent. I knew that, by then I knew they were slinging dope. So, any kind of money, any kind of financial help that I could get or give them, I knew it was something that would really help them. So, I tried to go out in the streets and commit crimes just to give them money. But the relationship I had with my mom, it was like she was a homegirl. She was one of the homegirls, and that's the same way that she was treated by a lot of the homies that I would take over there. Everybody knew my mom. My mom was like, that's the homegirl right there. You know what I mean? Everybody that would come over to the pad, she would embrace all my little homies, and they all looked at her like that. And that's the kind of relationship that we had. I know a lot of you that grew up like that, the same way that I did, either to parents that were addicted to drugs or parents that were out there in the streets committing crimes themselves, or just the type of lifestyle that I was living at a young age. You probably had similar relationships with your parents. And I'm not, who's to say that they're healthy or unhealthy? I don't know. That's the kind of relationship that we had. Anyways, I stayed in touch with my mom, the entire time I was in the county. And I knew that, when I left that county and I went to prison, that was probably going to be the end of my relationship, any kind of real relationship with my mom. I was never going to see her again. I knew I was going to pick up a life case. So once I left the county jail, I'd be able to write her and things like that, but that's not no real relationship. So I called her every chance I got. And back then we were still paying ransom fees for phone calls, $7-8 a phone call. So I wouldn't call her all the time, but I would reach out, once a month, maybe twice a month. And I would stay in touch with her and just, try to have whatever kind of relationship I could with her while I was there in the county jail. Because like I said, I knew it was going to, once I was gone, that was going to be it. Now, I think I mentioned this in episode 87, but at that time, my grandmother was ailing. And, my mom, my stepfather, my grandmother, my grandmother had a daughter that was like she adopted her from the time that she was an infant. That became like her real daughter. It was like her biological daughter. So my family really only consisted of my mom, my stepfather, my grandmother, and then I had a couple of aunts. But that was pretty much it. And, I told you guys my grandmother was ailing. I think she had, my mom had told me that she was blind now. She could barely see. My mom would live downstairs at my grandmother's house for a minute. My mom lived right around the corner from my grandmother. She had an apartment right there. So if she wasn't at her pad, she was at my grandmother's house. And she had a room downstairs. But, my grandmother wouldn't even be able to hear her, when she'd be downstairs calling her. She was getting old. And I knew that her time was coming. I believe I mentioned it in the last episode that, at one point, I want to say my grandmother's blood pressure dropped or something like that. And, she started having anxiety attacks. So she ended up landing in the hospital. And, I talked to her the best I could. She could barely hear me. And, the conversation, it was a rough conversation. It's my grandmother, and I knew she was dying. But, my mom, she thought that my grandmother wasn't going to make it home. She thought she was going to die right there, in the hospital, another month or two or whatever, but she wasn't going to walk out of the hospital. So she was dead. She really believed that. So, during those couple of weeks while my grandmother was there, I reached out like a couple times a week just to talk to her because I knew that time was coming. I was expecting to get one of those visits from the chaplain or, somebody to pop up at my gate and tell me, hey, Mendoza, the chaplain wants to see you. Anybody that's been locked up, anybody that's done time, you guys know what kind of visits I'm talking about. The chaplain, or, you get somebody pops up at your gate and tells you that you got a chaplain visit, you know that it's all bad. Somebody in your family passed away or somebody close to you passed away. So I was expecting to get one of those visits anytime, while my grandmother was in the hospital, but it never came. My grandmother actually ended up, she got her strength back. She got back on her feet and she walked out of the hospital. So she's back at home. She's back at home, and they were living in Daly City at that time. It's the only house that my grandmother lived in my entire life. Since I was born, she lived at that house. And it's a trip because the apartment complex that my mom was living at, you know, at that time was the same apartment complex that she was living at when I was 2 years old. This was years later, and she would move out of there and move on to other places, other houses, but she would end up getting an apartment back in that same complex. It was crazy. But anyway, so I'm, in constant contact with my mom, chopping it up with my stepdad, and, keeping them posted on everything that's happening with the case. And for those of you that don't remember, when I got arrested the week before I got busted, I had actually, I had planned on getting a visit from my mom and my stepfather. They were supposed to go out there to San Jose, and I was gonna plug them. I think I was gonna give them like 5 bands. I had a Cadillac that I had took from a cat named Jerome. The Cadillac, it was one of those new Cadillacs. It was a clean ass Cadillac, but it had like some 26-inch rims. They probably don't even make 26-inch rims, but there were some big ass rims, and it just wasn't my kind of car. I took that car as, a compensation for some dope that Jerome ended up, losing. But I had that Cadillac, and I was going to give it to my stepfather. I doubt it was probably even their kind of car, but, I was going to take care of them because they were still struggling at that time. They sold dope, my entire life. From the time I was a kid, when, my mom and my stepfather got custody of me, they had been selling dope the entire time I was alive. That's what they used to do. I think my stepfather worked a legitimate job at one point when I was around 10 years old, and it was brief. It was for a brief time, and then he went back to doing what he did, slinging dope out there in the streets. So, here's 30 something years later, and they're still slinging dope. So I was trying to look out for him. You know what I mean? I was making money out there, but I had plans to see him the week before my house got raided. So obviously that visit never happened. They ended up taking the Cadillac. They took all the money, that I had set aside, even the money I had set aside for them. And that visit never happened. But anyways, I stayed in constant contact with my mom. And the thing about my mom that I've never really even talked about too much, she lived a hard life. She lived a hard life. She lived like a hermit. Her house was just cluttered with, like, she had a lot of brand new stuff. She was always scamming and scheming, like, mail fraud type of shit, where she just had new pots and pans and, coffee grinders and coffee machines. And I mean, you name it, she had it in her apartment. There was just piles and piles of stuff that she got in the mail. But that's how she lived. She lived that kind of lifestyle. Literally, her daily routine consisted of, she wake up in the morning, obviously sick because she was addicted to heroin. She lay there in bed, and my stepfather would pop in about, they didn't even live together. They had a weird relationship. He would get there to her apartment around 10 o'clock. Then they would fix. They would both get loaded, or they would get well. I think those days were over. When you've been a dope fiend for 20, 30 years, it's not about getting loaded no more. It's about just trying to get right. So, they would both get right. They'd shoot dope. And I think my stepfather used to always go by Burger King or something and grab my mom the same shit for breakfast every morning with a coffee. And, that was what their relationship consisted of. He'd stay there for a couple hours, and then, he'd bounce. He'd leave at around 3 or 4 o'clock, and he'd obviously leave her a little bit of dope for her nightcap so she could get loaded throughout the day. But that's the kind of life she lived. It's a fucked up life. I didn't agree with the way she was living. I didn't agree with their relationship, but my mom, she was grown. And a lot of other times I try to intervene, and speak up on her behalf. I felt like my stepfather could do more for her, or that he should take her out of that environment that she was living in. I honestly thought my mom was gonna, I always used to think this. I had this bad feeling that she was gonna end up dying in her sleep, that she was gonna burn her apartment down because she would nod out and she'd be smoking cigarettes. And a lot of times, like you guys, I'm sure you guys have seen them, people that nod out and go to sleep. Their blankets, every blanket that they own in that house has got like 5 or 6 fucking burn holes in it. You guys know what I'm talking about. I know you've seen them. You see these blankets and they got these little black burn holes in them because somebody nodded out and burned a hole in the blanket. So, I always thought that she was going to end up falling asleep and she was going to drop a cigarette or something. Something was going to catch on fire and she was going to end up dying in a fire. That's a bad feeling that I always had over the years because that's all I used to ever see my mom. That's what her life consisted of, her sitting in bed and smoking and shooting dope. I mean, she would get up and get out every now and then, but most of the time she lived like a hermit. And then from years and years of using drugs, it took a toll on her body. Outwardly you can see that my mom was addicted to drugs. It affected her teeth, it affected just her, just the way she looked, and her demeanor. When somebody uses drugs all their life, it changes them. It has an effect. So, that was my mom, and I loved her regardless. I don't care how she looked, how she was. That was my mother, and she didn't matter what she looked like, how she acted. I loved the shit out of her. But we had a real close relationship. She was always there for me, even when I was in foster care. I went through all that stuff with you guys in the beginning. But, so my grandmother ends up getting out of the hospital. She goes back home, and now my mom, she's taking care of my grandmother because she's ailing. So now she's going over there a lot more often, and it's almost like she's living at my grandmother's house. She's practically living there now because she needs to be there constantly, to watch her. She can't get around. She can't take care of herself. So my mom's kind of like doing the in-care type of thing. So, a month goes by, a couple months go by, everything's just kind of just moving along. Nothing's happening in court, just nothing's really happening. This goes on for about a good 4 months. So then I want to say it's probably like 2 or 3 in the morning. 2 or 3 in the morning, I get a phone call. Well, let me back up. So this week, I want to say it was a Friday. It was a Friday. Like every Friday at the end of the month, that last Friday, I will call my mom. So I called her, and she put me on the phone with my grandmother, got a chance to talk to my grandmother, and we chopped it up like we did every month. And so that was that Friday, was the last Friday of the month. So I'm laying in bed. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I hear the door open up to Little Max. So I know somebody's coming through. It's the CO, probably coming through to do count. So I just lay there like I do every other time when they come through. But instead of counting, he comes to my gate and he's like, Mendoza, he's like, you gotta visit an interview with the chaplain. So as soon as I heard that, I laid there for a second, just for a brief second, and I thought to myself, fuck, man, my grandmother, she's gone. And I got that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach. This is somebody, again, like I said in the last episode, this is a staple. This is somebody that's been with me or been there my entire life. I mean, when I say she's a staple, she was a staple in my life. It was because I always knew, my grandmother, she was out there in Daly City. She was always there at any time. I could go by her pad when I was a youngster, go visit her. She was always there. And I would always maintain some type of contact, some type of relationship with my grandmother. I wasn't over there every day, but I had a relationship with her. I'd always go over there and visit her. So we were close. So, I'm thinking like, damn, man, she's finally gone. She's finally gone. I'm never gonna see her again. All these thoughts are popping into my mind. I'm trying to process these thoughts. Got this funky ass CO standing in front of my door, and I'm getting dressed, and I'm already trying to brace myself for the conversation. How is this gonna go? Because like my grandmother passed away. The chaplain's out there. Who does she got on the phone? Like, am I gonna call my mom, or like I was just wondering who I was gonna talk to, who they had out there. Those visits, they're the worst kind of visits. They're unexpected, obviously, and you don't know if somebody popped up at the jail or if they got somebody on the phone, or you don't know what to expect. So anyways, I get dressed, they cuff me up, belly chains, shackles, and Turtle. Turtle was still half asleep. So I'm walking by Turtle's cell, and he's like, "What's up, B?" And I'm like, "Bro, I got a chaplain visit, bro. It's like something happened." And he's like, "Oh, bro." He's like, "Fuck, homie." He's like, "All right, man." He's like, "I'll holler at you when you come back." So I'm like, "Yeah, cool, bro." So where I was at, Little Max, it's on the third deck. As soon as you walk out of Little Max, you got an elevator right there. So I bust a hard left, boom, I'm on the elevator. So we go down, and the chaplain's office is literally right there. You come off the office, you make a hard right, you go towards another place that I spent a lot of time, towards Area 51 or ADSEG on the second deck. And then you got, like, in the back, there's a sergeant's office, and then I guess the chaplain's got a little spot back there. So I go back there, and there's a chaplain. I know who she is. I've seen her. I mean, by this point, I've been in this jail 6-7 years. So, I've seen her in the jail before. I've talked to her before. Matter of fact, this is the second time seeing her because, when Vicky passed away the first time, even though, Dela Cruz told me that Vicky passed, the chaplain still came up and made that notification later on. So, I knew who she was behind that visit. And as soon as she seen me, she remembered me from when we talked, about Vicky when she passed away. So she was like, "Oh," I don't think she knew who I was. I mean, she had a name, and that was it. So I walk in, and as soon as I seen her, I'm just like, "Yeah, it's one of those kind of visits, huh?" And she was like, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." So I sit down, the CO, he kicks rocks, he walks away, and I'm already bracing myself for it. I mean, I know I pretty much already come to terms with the fact that my grandmother's gone. But what happens next, it blew my mind, and it tore me to the core, man. Straight up. She's like, "Look, I'm sorry." She's like, "I got a phone call last night," and she grabbed a piece of paper from such and such. And she said, basically she said that your mom, Patricia, and then, Mendoza, she passed away at a certain time. She gave me a time. And I looked at her, and I was like, "What? What are you talking about? My Patricia Mendoza, my mom." I couldn't believe it. It was too much to process. It really was. I was like, "Nah, you got to be making a mistake. You're talking about my grandmother." It was almost like I got upset with her for making that kind of mistake. It's like, "You're not talking about my mom. You're talking about my fucking grandmother." You know what I mean? I seriously thought she was fucking up and was giving me some bad information. And she was like, "No, sweetheart, I'm sorry." She's like, "It was your mom." And I'm like, "That's impossible, man. That's impossible." And she asked me if I wanted to make a phone call. And, I'm talking to her, but thoughts are going through my mind 1,000 miles an hour. I start to think, like, I know she messed up and she's making a mistake, but then fuck, she could actually be telling me, she could be giving me some good information. What if it is my mom? So I'm like, now I'm all fucked up. I'm like, "Nah, I don't want to make no phone call. Just take me back to my cell. I just wanted to get out of there." These things are coming into my mind too fast, and I didn't want to be around nobody. I felt, I felt mad. I felt a little bit of anger. When you lose a parent, it's a different kind of pain. It's a different kind of pain from losing a sibling, or your wife, or a husband, or a kid, or it's a different kind of pain when you lose a mother or a father, that hurt is deep, especially if you got a close relationship with your mom. I see other people even today, they have relationships with their mother and like, damn, I used to be close with my mom like that, and I feel for him. And I look at him and I say to myself, man, when you lose her, the pain that you're gonna feel is gonna be something that you're probably not gonna be ready for. Like these are like, people that are close to me and that have relationships with their mother or their father. They're fortunate enough to still have them around. That's why I'm always encouraging people, man. If you got your mom is still around, your dad is still around, man, take advantage of that time. You're blessed to still have them, because there's gonna be that day when they're gonna be gone, and you're gonna regret not, having more of a relationship, or not burying the hatchet. If you got, some bad feelings, you guys ain't really on good terms, or you just don't talk no more, you're gonna regret it. So all these not to get off track, but all these thoughts are going through my mind. I want to tear up out of there, get back up to the cell. So I get back up there, and the chaplain, she was only doing her job. It was kind of messed up because I kind of beasted up on her, thinking that, like, how the fuck can you give me some bad information? Like, you really dropped the ball on this one, right? So anyways, I apologize to her later though. But anyways, I get back up to the cell. CO, he bounces. And as soon as the CO bounces, after he uncuffs me, I sit there on my bunk for a minute, and it's like I got 1,000 thoughts just running through my mind. Just like everything that I've been through in life with my mother. From the time I was a kid, everything we had been through, every memory, every thought, everything that related to my mother was going through my mind. And, I remember Turtle yelled over, he's like, "Hey, B, is everything cool?" And I'm like, I don't know, bro. I told him what the chaplain told me. He's like, "Bro, she's telling me my mom passed away. Think she fucked up." But I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know, homie. I'll find out in the morning." So yeah, he goes back to sleep, and I'm sitting there fucked up. I'm just waiting until the morning now. I can't go back to sleep. There's no way. I got too many thoughts going through my mind. Now reality's really starting to kick in, because I know the type of lifestyle my mom she lives out there. So it really shouldn't have been that much of a surprise. But my mom's taking care of my grandmother. My grandmother's the one ailing. It's not my mom. I'm out of character. So anyways, I just kind of lay there, and for the rest of the morning, I'm just thinking. I'm in deep thought. Breakfast comes about 20 minutes later. That's the thing about Santa Clara County Jail, man. The motherfuckers feed you at like 2 in the morning. So breakfast comes, I don't even want to touch that shit. Usually I'm on top of it. Give me 2 fucking ice cold milks, some SOS. But breakfast comes, and I just throw it on the floor. I don't even want the milk, nothing. I sit back down, and I'm waiting. I'm waiting for morning program to open up, for the next shift to come in. Give me the phone so I can start making some phone calls. I got to make some phone calls. Reach out to my stepfather, call my mom. So that's what I do. I wait until 6 o'clock in the morning until program opens up. It seemed like fucking forever. It seemed like I was waiting for hours and hours. So I wait, and as soon as they come in at 6 in the morning, I'm right there posted on the bars. I'm like, "Can I get the phone? I need to use the phone." So I think they had already informed the COs just by the way they were acting. I think when somebody passes like that, they give them a heads up. Hey, keep an eye on that individual or something. He just had a death in the family or something. So, they were like, yeah, I'll get you the phone. So they got the phone, pop my tray slot, boom. I start making phone calls. 6 in the morning. I didn't get through to nobody. I called my mom. It's the first person I call her number. And it just rings and rings and rings. So I'm stressed out the box now. I wait another hour, 7 o'clock, I'm blowing up every number I got, just trying to find somebody. Even if I can just get somebody to start making some calls out there, three-way me or so I can get a call out to my stepfather's cell, but I can't get a hold of nobody. It's too fucking early. Everybody's still asleep or they're not answering their phones. So, I don't find out until I want to say it was like later on in the afternoon that same day that it was actually my mom. And the details wouldn't come in until I think it was later that evening that I finally talked to my stepfather. And I'm gonna tell you guys like this. My stepfather was always a strong dude. He was a strong dude. And he raised me. He tried to instill a lot of his values and the things that he believed in. He tried to instill those things in me. One thing I never seen my stepfather do is cry. I never seen him cry. I never seen, pain hit him that deep. But that evening when I got him on the phone, as soon as he heard my voice, he broke down and just started sobbing. And hearing him, cry like that, it fucked me up. You know what I mean? I had a big ass lump in my throat. So I'm like, Pops, what the fuck's going on, man? And he's like, Jay, she's gone, man. She's gone. Your mom passed away last night. And I'm like, no. He said she passed away yesterday. It had happened yesterday, like in the evening at around 5 o'clock the day before. So I'm like, man, how? What happened? So, anyways, when he was able to tell me, when he was able to get a hold of his emotions enough to where he could tell me what happened, he was like, all he knew at that point, because they were still, doing an investigation on the circumstance to how she died. But all that he really knew is that my mom was in bed, like I had always thought that, she was gonna die in bed. She was in bed and that she nodded out again, something I always thought was gonna happen. But instead of burning her apartment down, she nodded out and she leaned forward and she suffocated in a pillow. And when I heard that, obviously it fucked me up, man. My mom passed away prematurely. She was 50 something years old. And that's still fairly young. She still should have had a good amount of life left, even despite the fact that she was living the kind of lifestyle that she did, abusing her body the way that she did. She still had at least another 10 or 15 years in her, but she was taken prematurely. And when you lose a parent like that and it doesn't have to happen, it hurts. It fucked me up. And again, here I am in the county jail at a time where I can't do nothing. I can't go nowhere. I can't grieve with my family. I can't embrace them. I can't help them get through their struggles or their pain, their grief. I'm stuck in a cell, locked in a box, left to deal with mine. So, even though my stepfather, he confirmed it, even though he told me what happened, when you're locked up, sometimes your mind has a way of playing games on you, straight up. I was thinking, and I even thought this with Vicky, straight up. This is real shit. When Vicky passed away, I thought, you know what? Maybe everybody's just telling me this. Maybe they're just telling me this as a way of helping me, get through losing her or something. I'm thinking maybe she just wanted to move on, and everybody's just telling me this just, to help me get through it. But then on the other hand, I'm thinking like they're not gonna be that cruel. Nobody's just gonna tell me no shit like that, because they know that to play that kind of game, I wouldn't have reacted. I wouldn't have been okay with it. So, but I was telling myself that, and I told myself that with my mom too. Like, man, there's no way she passed away. Maybe they're just telling me that try to share. I don't know. But I kept dialing her number. Just like I said in my book, you know, my mom's, her number, to me, it almost represented a lifeline, if that makes sense to you guys. Like, I continued to call my mom's number. We're talking now months later, after her funeral, after her memorial, she was already gone. We're talking about 5, 6 months later. And when I would call, it would always go through and her recording would come on. So as long as I heard her recording, to me, in my mind, it represented that she was still alive, if that makes sense to you guys. So I would continue to call. You know, a couple weeks later, I call again and I hear that. And then there was that one time when I called and the recording was no longer there. Another recording came on and said that number has been disconnected. And in my mind, that represented that she was actually really gone. I know that's probably weird to some of you guys, but that was just my way of dealing with it. And I guess that was just the way my mind was working at that time. And I would do this same thing later on when there'd be other deaths. I was doing the same thing with Vicky's number. I did the same thing with her number. Later on, you know, my grandmother would pass away and I do the same thing. I kept calling her number, calling until that one time when I would call and when I would hear that recording that said that number has been disconnected, it represented that she was really gone. I know it's weird, but it is what it is. So anyways, like I told you guys, you know, when Vicky passed away, it was tough having to deal with that kind of grief. You know, being in the county jail, being locked up in a cell like that. I don't think I dealt with it right at that time. I think I waited and I waited, took a couple months, and then just one day it just hit me. And somehow, some way I let it out. Like the first time I got into it with those COs and I had to go downstairs. They had to take me downstairs and throw me in a chair and put a mask over my head. That was my way of dealing with it at that time. I didn't know how to deal with it any other kind of way. That was my way of dealing with it. But it wasn't until about 5 months later that, you know, I finally accepted the fact she was gone. And, you know, it was a tough thing to deal with. Like, I thought about her apartment, like, man, that apartment is out there right now. It's reduced to a memory, just like my grandmother's house around the corner. You know, there's other people living there now. So that part of my life doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, it's tough, man. Anybody that's ever lost a loved one while they were incarcerated, I feel for you, because it's you know, it's a hard thing to deal with, and you don't get to be a part of the services. You don't get to, you know, go to any funerals or none of that stuff. No, I obviously wasn't a part of my mom's memorial. I couldn't go there. You know, I couldn't be a part of it because I was incarcerated, just like Vicky. When she passed away, there wasn't going to be no escort and allowing me to go to the funeral, none of that stuff. What I did, you know, for my mom's memorial is I wrote her eulogy. And it was something that I worked on for like 2 weeks. And it was like a 3 or 4 page document that they read, and, you know, it had her favorite songs and they played her songs. So, you know, that was how my mom passed away. And, you know, it was another dark moment for me. But anyway, that's how I ended up losing my mom. And this was another dark chapter for me. But I would have to rebound. You know, eventually I'd have to pick myself up, dust myself off, and keep it pushing. And that's what I did. You know, I came to the realization that she was gone, that she was in a better place, and at least she wasn't living that kind of lifestyle that she was living. You know, she was at peace somewhere. Anyway, this is probably a good place to close this one up. I want to try to get out another video to you guys tonight. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. It's already late, but I'm going to try. So with that being said, this is episode 88 of Inner Demons. I'll try to get out another one to you guys before the weekend or by the weekend. Once again, on behalf of Sandman, I apologize for that last video. That was not me repeating myself. That was Sandman not editing. Sandman, I ain't trying to throw you under the bus, but I'm just saying though. Well, I'm the one that they jump on in the comments, not you, fool. Anyways, it's all good. Like I said, it happens, man. Anyways, you guys, this is probably a good place to end this one right here. I want to try to jump on this other video. It's late. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it out tonight, but if I don't, I'll try to get it out to you guys tomorrow. And we're going to start doing lives again. That's the other thing that I meant to tell you guys. You know, it's been a while since we've done a live. We used to do them all the time. We're going to start getting back into that again. Anyways, this episode 88, Inner Demons. With that being said, this your boy B, and I'm out.